Have you ever seen a doppelgänger? This happened to me about 2 years ago, at the end of December 2020. I was 19 at the time. My girlfriend and I were at my grandparents' house having a couple of drinks in the garage until it got too cold to stay there. It was one of the coldest nights of the year, and there was a strong blizzard that night. By the way, we live in Canada. We both returned home around 2 a.m. She came into my room, and I went out to the kitchen to make something in the oven. I was talking on the phone alone in the kitchen when my grandmother and my girlfriend came out to the kitchen together. It was a little strange because my grandmother never gets up that late, and it was even stranger that my girlfriend went out at the same time. The first thing my grandmother told me was not to go out again tonight, because on a night like that, people lose their lives. I was a little scared because I was about to go back to the garage to look for something I never gave. I told anyone I was going out again. My girlfriend and my grandmother stood there looking at me with the strangest expressions I've ever seen, with very unnatural smiles that did seem right. Then my girlfriend came over and hugged me. When I grabbed her, she was freezing cold. I commented on this, and when I mentioned how cold her expression was, her smile faded, and she looked at me with very serious and sad eyes and didn't say anything. I also noticed something else. It smelled like a campfire, a smoky, earthy smell. There was no explanation for this, and she hadn't smelled like that before. I swear that at that moment I felt chills all over. There was something so strange about it, but I couldn't put my finger on it. My girlfriend whispered in my ear, "Don't go out tonight." She walked back to my grandmother. She was standing next to her head down and a serious expression on her face. While my grandmother was still looking at me with that strange "they're fake," it was so strange that I stood there speechless. The wind began to howl literally outside. My grandmother turned and looked at my girlfriend. "Don't mess with black magic," she said. "Nothing good will come of this." My girlfriend said nothing. She continued looking down. I stood there confused. My girlfriend looked at me. "We have to go now," she said. They both started to walk away. My looked at me. "For a second. See you on the other side," she said with that strange smile. I felt another shiver run through my body when she said that. They turned a corner and left the kitchen. I stood there for a while, not knowing what to do with all this. I decided not to go out to the garage. I would go get my things. The next morning, I stayed in the kitchen for another 10 minutes until the food was ready. I returned to my room with him. My girlfriend was lying in bed. She got up and we put on a movie. I guess I stayed quiet because she asked me what's wrong. I told her everything was fine. It took me 10 minutes to say anything about it because, to be honest, I was still scared. I turned to her and asked why she and my grandma had gone out to the kitchen the moment I said my nose started bleeding. I ran to the bathroom and took something to stop the bleeding. When I got back to the bedroom, I told my girlfriend everything. As you can guess, she said she never left the kitchen and swore on anyone's life that she was in the room the whole time. She didn't smell like smoke anymore either. We went and woke up my grandma immediately afterward, and my grandma said the same thing. She actually thought we were trying to annoy her and didn't believe me. We were so scared after this that we had trouble sleeping the rest of the night. The part that really ruined my girlfriend was when I told her how cold I felt and how I smelled like smoke. The only explanation we could come up with was that maybe if I had gone out that night something would have happened to me. Bad, maybe the spirits of dead relatives who were watching over me came to me in that form so I wouldn't be afraid and they could pass on the message. The last part that made sense was the part about black magic. My girlfriend just received a book on witchcraft from her friend last week. My girlfriend never opened it for pre-orders again. After this, she took what was said as a warning. I've been thinking about writing this story for the past 2 years, and my girlfriend encouraged me to finally do it because maybe someone else had an experience like this. To this day, I still get chills thinking about it, especially the last thing that was said. See you on the other side if you're enjoying it. Subscribe. I live on the Caribbean island of Trinidad. We have a rich history of supernatural folklore and myth that stretches from before slavery to the time of the first peoples, but nothing in our legends seems to match. The incidents I'm about to describe to you were when I was 16 years old and staying with my uncle at his house in La Vental on the outskirts of Port of Spain, the island's capital. In this neighborhood, the most terrifying thing was a car passing by or a home invasion. Not necessarily ghosts and demons. My uncle had already retired to his room at the end of a short hallway for the night. I was up watching some cartoons and waiting for the mid-noe to try and see if I could sneak a peek at some softcore porn on Cinemax. I got bored around 11:30 at night and went down to my uncle's room to check on him. That's when I saw him. He looked just like him, standing outside his room alone. About 3 feet tall and with strange, sunken eyes. At first, I rubbed my eyes to make sure it wasn't my real uncle squatting my uncle in every way imaginable, from the flared nostrils to the flecks of gray hair on his chin and the sides of his head. I've never encountered him before, face to face with something so utterly grotesque and corrupt. It may seem harmless enough, just a much shorter version of your father, but it seemed as corrupt as something I know that's parodied by some outside force. He saw me at the end of the hall and smiled. He was missing teeth, just like my uncle, but that wasn't the warm, jovial smile I recognized from my real uncle. It looked absolutely sinister, along with the small eyes. I could feel the dinner I ate a few hours earlier churning in my stomach, and my lower lip began to tremble. It was horrible, almost nauseating. In the blink of an eye, I saw him running toward me. I could hear the sound of his bare soles hitting the linoleum floorboards we had in the hallway. I screamed and blinked. He was gone. My uncle heard the scream and woke up. "What's going on out there?" he asked, dazed, half awake, half asleep, as he poked his head around the door. Could I have? Confident, anything, so I told him what I saw. He showed some concern but did his best to try to hide it. We've had stories of little people in our folklore, particularly the domes who roam our isolated wooded areas, but they are the souls of unborn children whose distinctive quality is their backward feet. This entity didn't have that quality, so I'm still worried about what it might be. That was the last time I had a strange encounter in my uncle's house, but it wasn't. Years passed since the incident, and over time, I casually put it in the back of my mind, as one of those things I could dismiss as my imagination, despite the overwhelming feeling of fear and dread. I visited my uncle several times since then and even stayed overnight on some of those occasions, and nothing out of the ordinary happened. Recently, I went to his house to spend the night. I got up around midnight to urinate when I went to see him again. Instead of finding him peacefully sleeping, I saw what was left of him. The white sheets of his bed were stained a bright scarlet with blood. Body parts lay in the corner, while his torso lay in a pile of bloody flesh. At first, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. How could this have happened? How did I not hear anything? Our two rooms were literally next to each other. How am I going to explain this to the police? Who did this? How did they get in? How did they leave the house? This last bit made me ask another question. Did they ever leave the house? It wasn't a very big house by any means, but the idea of being trapped in a house with someone or something capable of disarming a man like a car so quickly and silently. As this was unsettling, I picked up the phone to call the police. Halfway through the second ring, I looked toward the house, the room, and saw my uncle sleeping with a pillow between his thighs. As always, Besson Street Police Station speaking. Corporal Jacob, what's your emergency? I hung up. The blood, the severed fingers and toes, everything was so vivid. Even the finger stains on the white sheets messed up, but here he was clearly snoring as lively as ever, but in a deep sleep. I didn't sleep a wink that night. I just stayed in bed with my eyes closed and tossed and turned with the fan directly on me. My uncle woke me up around 7 the next morning for breakfast. I ate in silence, but I remember him looking at me several times during the meal. Then he said something that bothered me at the time, and an hour later, 2 months later, "You know what you can tell me? Anything. If you saw something, you should let me know," he said. How did he know? Oh, my fear and discomfort were so obvious that he could tell. I'm not well. No, I slept last night. That's all. Next story. I thought I'd found my doppelganger, but the truth was much more terrifying. It all started one ordinary afternoon when I decided to visit a new cafe in my city. While I was waiting for my order, a woman walked in and my heart stopped. It was like I was seeing a distorted reflection of myself. She had the same hair, although a little longer, and facial features so similar that I felt like I was standing right in front of someone. The feeling was strange, almost unreal, but also a little funny. I thought about going over and saying something like, "Looks like someone stole my face," but I decided it might be too strange. Things got weird when she noticed me too. It wasn't a look of simple curiosity, but an expression of absolute terror. Her eyes widened and she almost dropped her purse. Without saying a word, she quickly left the cafe, leaving me with a mixture of intrigue and confusion. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about her. What had happened? Why had she reacted that way? My friends, laughing, told me that Seeger had seen me, a ghost or something like that. But I felt there was something more. I couldn't get that look out of my head. A few days passed, and I thought it had been a curious event, but nothing more, until I saw her again. This time it was in a supermarket. I approached slowly, trying not to scare her, but before I could say anything, she said, "You shouldn't be here," in a tone of voice that was half warning and half fear. "What do you mean?" I asked her, trying not to sound as nervous as I felt. She put a hand to her chest as if trying to calm herself and said, "You look just like my identical sister, but she died 3 years ago." My mind went blank. I tried to process what she had said, but it didn't make sense. It must be a coincidence, I babbled. She shook her head. "It's not just that you look alike, you're the same. You even have that scar on your right eyebrow." Instinctively, I brought my hand to my eyebrow. The scar was there, a reminder of a fall as a child. At that moment, I felt everything was spinning. It couldn't be that woman. Sure, I was an exact copy of someone who had already died. It didn't exist. I tried to reason with her, telling her that there was no way it could be true. But she just ran off again, leaving her shopping cart behind. When I got home, I couldn't help but search for information. If her sister had died, there must be something in the news. I spent hours investigating until I found it. An old article from a local newspaper talked about a car accident in which a woman named Elena had died. The photo in the article was disturbing. Not only did she look like me, but she was me. My heart pounded as I tried to find a rational explanation. Maybe it was an impossible coincidence, maybe there was something I didn't know about my own past. But then I received an anonymous message on my phone. It said, "Stop searching. It's not safe for you." I blocked the number, but I couldn't help but feel a chill run through my body. It was like someone was watching me, making sure I didn't get to the bottom of it. Ever since then, I've had the feeling that something wasn't right. Sometimes I think I see someone watching me from the corner of my eye, but when I turn around, there's no one there. I don't know what to think, but one thing's for sure. Finding your doppelganger isn't as bad as it seems. Sometimes it's better not to know the truth. Next story, my daughter who disappeared 3 years ago just appeared at my door. I never imagined I'd see her again. That night had been calm like any other until I heard the knocks on the door. They weren't desperate knocks. But there was something disturbing about her rhythm. When I opened it, there she was standing on the threshold with the same look I remembered, but with a different air. "Hello, Mom," she said, as if 3 long years hadn't passed since she disappeared without a trace. My mind froze. It couldn't be real. It was as if all those days of anguish and unanswered questions were compressed into a single instant. I felt like I was running out of breath. "Are you really you?" Was that the only thing I could tell? She nodded with a small laugh, but there was something in her eyes I didn't recognize. I let her in, not knowing exactly what to do or say. She was wearing the same clothes she had on the day she disappeared. They were untouched, as if time hadn't passed for her. I tried to hug her, but her body was cold, almost as if she weren't entirely real. I walked away slowly, trying to hide my bewilderment. "Where have you been all this time?" I asked, trying to sound calm, but my voice was shaking. She lowered her gaze. "I don't remember much, just that I got lost, but now I'm here." Her answer was strangely simple, as if she was reading from a script. I decided not to pressure her. Maybe she was in a state of shock. I made her something to eat, but she didn't touch the food. She just sat at the table, staring at me as if trying to memorize every detail of my face. Every time I tried to ask her more questions, she would either divert the subject or answer vaguely. That night, after I went to sleep and called the police. I told them my daughter had returned, but they seemed as incredulous as I was. They said they would send someone the next morning to verify. Meanwhile, I sat in the living room, unable to sleep. There was something wrong. At midnight, I heard a noise in her room. I opened the door slowly and saw her standing in front of the mirror, whispering something I couldn't understand. Her reflection wasn't moving at the same time as her. It was as if I were a couple of seconds out of phase. My heart raced as I called her. She turned slowly with an expression I hadn't seen before. "Everything's okay," Mom said, but her voice sounded hollow. The next morning, when the police arrived, I told them everything. But when they went to look for her, the room was empty. There was no trace of anyone having been there, only a small mark on the mirror remained, like a fingerprint that wasn't mine. Since then, I haven't seen her again, but sometimes at night, I hear soft knocks on the door. I never open it. I'm not sure I want to know what's on the other side. Next story then. This is a story. When my mom was in different places and closed twice. One day when I was 10, I woke up and it was a rainy day. My mom had already taken a bath and went to work downstairs. Our house used to be a store downstairs. I knew because when I woke up, I got up and asked my brother where she had gone. He said she was downstairs. So I went up to have breakfast. After breakfast, I went to my room to take a bath. My mom has a habit of leaving the door open in her room, and since her room is across from mine, I always close the door. But this time, it's strange. I saw my mom in her usual pajamas, sitting on the bed watching TV. I was confused, but I just ignored it. My brother was in my room and I told him that he lied to me and that mom was in her room. So he answered and demanded that I show proof. So I opened the door and we peeked in. There was no one there. The TV was still on, but no one was there. I got scared and called my mom. She screamed back, but the screams were coming from downstairs. When I ran downstairs, I saw her fully dressed, writing down the items she was missing. I ran upstairs and saw that my mom's pajamas were in the washing machine. I heard my mom say my name, and then I ran downstairs. When I got to her again, she asked me why I had come back. She still haunts me. Because after we moved and settled down, sometimes I hear my nickname in my mom's voice. Only my family knew my nickname, and when I walked up to her to answer, she always said, "Are you okay?" I didn't call anyone, and when I asked my brother if he heard my mom call me, he said no. She never did. My brother is very honest, and from his expression, I knew they weren't lying. Next story, being in high school is very tiring, and it was a cool, rainy day. In the middle of October, a perfect day for a nap, especially an after-school nap, the kind of nap that's just different. "Hi Mom," I say, waving at her. "Hello, honey, how was school today?" "Good. I guess the same old story, you know how it is." "Where's Dad?" "He's still at work, honey." "Oh, I thought he got out at 3:40, it's 4 right now." "He decided to stay at work a little longer to make up for the time he missed when he was sick last week." "Ah, Goose, that's right. I forgot about that. Anyway, I'm going to take a little nap, and then I'll do my homework since I'm really tired right now." "I love you, Mom." "I love you too, honey," she says in such an amazing, loving voice that I felt warm inside, walking up the creaking wooden stairs to my room. I open the door and leave my backpack on the floor, jumping onto my bed. I close my eyes and fall into a dream. In this dream, I was flying in the sky. A very typical, common, and stereotypical type of dream that everyone has had at least once in their life. I remember the sky was orange with bright pink clouds that looked like cotton candy. I was riding a horse and flying, just enjoying life in my own imagination of being a growing kid. Then suddenly, the horse started making a very creepy, demonic whinnying noise. The horse's head fell off and stared at me with glowing red eyes. Suddenly, I fell from the sky and everything went black from there. I woke up in fear, panting and scared. I realized I had peed the bed and was sweating profusely. I looked at the time on my clock. I saw that it showed 2218. "I've been asleep for 5.5 hours, I whispered, then decided to get out of bed and drink some water, going back down those damn creaky stairs. That's when something strange happened, something real, really strange, honey. It's you. Help me, honey, please." It was my mom. It was her voice. It sounded muffled and came from behind the walls. "Mom. What are you doing there? Upstairs, is everything okay? Your father wants me to make sure you behave today." She screamed with a demonic roar. At the end, laughing maniacally. "Mom, you're scaring me." I screamed in fear and just confusion. "To be honest with you, who said I was your mom?" she answered. Then there she was. Coming from around the corner, on all fours. Hair in her face. Mouth open. Laughing hysterically and evil. "Dad told me he'll be staying even longer today," she said with a bloody smile on her face that could barely be seen behind the hair covering her scared face. I ran down the stairs and tripped over something. Remembering what I tripped over, Jade was in total shock and disbelief at what she had done. I saw it was my dad. He had worms in his eyes, they cut off his ears and opened his stomach. "Ha!" The lady upstairs kissed. "This isn't my mom, but she isn't. Who is this lady and where is my mom? Is this a skinwalker, a demon, a doppelganger, an alien, or just a crazy killer? I guess we'll never make it."